Good afternoon. This is Rachel with Infused Meadows, and this evening for dinner, or as I call it, supper, I'm making we'll call it a seasoned or spiced tomato soup. So I thought maybe somebody would like to see this and perhaps even try it. So I will be pausing as I go just to get things done and moved over, but I'll explain what I'm doing as I do it. So what you're going to need to start with is going to be two 28-ounce cans of tomatoes. Now I'm using San Marzanos. It's just my favorite when it comes to this, and I do grow them in my garden, or at least I did, but this last year's harvest was awful, so unfortunately I've had to buy some cans. Anywho, that doesn't really matter. So two 28-ounce cans. I like to pulse mine up one at a time, and then the second batch will be different. Okay, so I don't think you need to see me blend this down, but I will bring you back for the second one just so you can see what I'm adding to it. I'll be right back. Okay, so my first 28 ounces is blended, and this is my second 28 ounces. So to this, I am going to be adding 2 cups of onion. I've diced this up, so it's 2 cups of diced onion. And then on the side over here, I have 1 cup on the side that I'm going to do not in the blender. So just try to remember, you have 56 ounces total of tomato. And then to all this, we're also going to be adding some chicken broth. So 3 cups of onions really is not as much as it sounds. So I'm going to get this blended, and then we'll be back. Okay, what we're going to do. I have got 1/4 a cup of room temperature unsalted butter. So 1/4 a cup or 4 tablespoons, whichever's easier for you. 2.5 tablespoons of all-purpose or plain flour. The 1 cup of finely chopped onion that I told you about earlier. I have 1/3 a cup of heavy cream coming to room temperature. I have 2 tablespoons of not quite finely chopped garlic, but it's small. In this, I have 1.5 tablespoons of sugar, a half teaspoon of salt, 1 teaspoon of black pepper, and 1 tablespoon of basil. Now, if you have fresh basil, I would start with, about 1/4 a cup. I'm just using my own homegrown dried basil. And then towards the end, I have my tomatoes already over there. I told you about those. And then I have 2 cups of chicken broth. Now, my half teaspoon of salt in this is because I make my own chicken broth. I dehydrate the chicken, grind it down along with some carrots and mushrooms and onion. I add in some paprika, a little bit of salt, some black pepper, and some turmeric. I do add some parsley as well. But so that's the reason mine may look a little bit different, I guess, than some of yours. Because, carrot and stuff doesn't really powder, so you'll see it at the bottom. It's fine. Anywho, I don't add a whole lot of salt to mine. So I'm doing the half teaspoon of salt in this because I don't have all the salt there. But I always suggest, start a little light if you'd like, and then you can taste it at the end and see if you need to adjust. And then towards the end, we will also be adding 1/4 a teaspoon of baking soda. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get my butter into the pot, and then once it's melted, I'm going to add my onions. And then once they're translucent, I'll bring you back. You've seen me do onions. I don't feel the need to just keep bothering you with it. My onions are good to go. I am now adding in my flour. 2.5 tablespoons. And then we just want to stir to coat those onions. I find that this is the best way to add flour. Like I told you before, it helps cut back on the lumps that occur when you add flour into a pot. So I'm going to keep stirring. I'm going to let this cook for about a minute. We're going to cook that raw flour taste off, and then we'll be right back. Okay, so we've cooked the flour down, and now I'm going to slowly drizzle in that chicken broth. Now that we have that good and mixed in, let me just make sure, run this across the bottom, make sure I didn't miss any flour that may have decided to suddenly stick to the bottom. I did not. Okay, we're going to switch spatulas. And now we are going to pour in the tomatoes. Well, I know what I'll be doing next. Cleaning that backboard. Oh, is what it is, y'all. Is what it is. Cleaning's part of doing things. Okay. So, we've got all of our tomato in here. Yeah. And we're going to stir that in. Okay. Next, we are going to go ahead and add that seasoning mix that I told you about earlier. And you just gently stir this in. I say gently just because you don't want your basil to, you know, splash up on the side and decide that that's just where it wants to stay. Now you can also make that garlic pull-apart bread that I showed, or you can turn that same recipe into like garlic knots, which is easy. It's just instead of cutting it up into a whole bunch of little pieces, you'll just cut it into, we'll say 8. Cut it in, section that into 8, and then just take each one and roll it out into a log and then tie it into a knot. Very carefully, it is dough. And then you just put that onto your pan to do its second rise. And then you can brush some of the garlic butter on the top before you bake it. And when you bake it, it's the same temperature. You'll just check it in, we'll say about anywhere between 12 to 15 minutes. If you do smaller knots. If you do big knots, well then I would probably start checking it about 15 minutes, but it could take up to 18 to cook. Also depends on your oven. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to let this cook until it starts to bubble. Once it starts to bubble, I'm going to set a timer and I'm going to let this cook for about 15 minutes. I'll bring you back at that point. Okay, so I'm halfway through my cook time and I have a low simmer. In case I think I did forget to mention that earlier. So what I'm going to do now, since I have 5 minutes left, I'm going to go ahead and add my garlic. And then stir that in. And I'm going to let this continue cooking for the next 5 minutes. And then I'll be back again. Okay, so we've cooked our extra 5 minutes. And what we're going to do now is, I've just done this, but you want to taste this. And then add salt if you need to. You should taste more than just the tomato. If all you taste is tomato, then you need more salt. I ended up adding 1/4 teaspoon more to mine. And for me, that's, you can taste the basil and the garlic, but it's not overwhelming. It is just nice and subtle. So if you don't get that at all, then add some more salt. And if you want, I mean, you can always add more pepper. You just make sure that you can at least taste things before you decide, well, I want to add a little bit more of whatever else. All right, now we are going to pour in our 1/3 cup of heavy cream. It may not seem like a lot, but hey, if you are somebody that gets indigestion or heartburn from the acidity of your tomatoes, then the upside is that thick heavy cream. This right here will actually help you. So we're going to stir in our heavy cream until it is nice and combined. And now that it is, that 1/4 teaspoon of baking soda. Now this will foam. So you want to stir this until it stops foaming. So once it stops foaming, you want to turn your heat off. I've turned mine down to low while I'm doing this, but you'll want to turn your heat off. And then you're just going to let this set for about, 5-10 minutes. Don't burn yourself trying to eat it. Let it cool off, and then you can do one of a few things. You can put this into your bowl, eat it plain. You can eat it with a grilled cheese sandwich on the side. You can, like I said earlier, you can make the garlic bread. That's always nice to go with tomato soup. You serve it however you want. As you can see, we've stopped foaming. And it is absolutely beautiful. I'll get you a little bit of a close-up, but I hate the evening time because you don't actually see it, I don't think, how red this really, of course, this right here may not help either. Let me grab a spoon. We'll see if this helps at all. There you go. And you can see it's not runny. Okay, so hopefully that helped you. I'm going to let this set before serving. I hope that you give this a try. I really do. If you have leftovers, then just store those in an airtight container in your refrigerator. I've never had it in the refrigerator longer than 4 days, so I can't say past that. But I do know that at 4 days, it's still good. And that was just because we had it one night for dinner, and then we had leftovers, and so my husband ended up taking it to work 2 days in a row as lunch. So anyway, just make sure it's an airtight container in the refrigerator. You can freeze this. I mean, almost anything you can freeze. You'll never hear me say freeze this dough. And there's a reason for that. I've yet to have dough frozen that works for me. But we'll get into that in a completely different video. Anywho, so if you make this, be careful if you do it in cast iron. Tomato and cast iron, they're not besties. They don't get along very well. The acidity in the tomatoes can wreck your cast iron. So if your cast iron is enameled, porcelain, or just make sure it's coated with, like I was trying to say before I got tongue-tied, enamel or porcelain coated. That way you avoid the acidity of the tomatoes hurting your actual cast iron. I use stainless steel. I try to use stainless steel for everything, but as you've seen in my videos, I don't have everything in stainless steel yet. If this does leave some streaks that you're not quite happy with in your pot, put some water in it, bring it to a boil. Once your water starts to boil, add you about a tablespoon to a tablespoon and a half of baking soda. Let that boil for about 7 minutes, and then turn it off and walk away. Once it cools enough to where you can get your hands in there, it still takes some elbow grease, but all those little marks will be out and you're perfectly fine. I don't have a dishwasher. I have righty and lefty. So I can't tell you on the dishwasher. Both my hands, they do just fine. Anywho, I hope you try this. I hope you like it. And if you don't, hey, there are a ton of recipes out there, and I hope that you find the one that's right for you. And as always, have a wonderful day.